Welcome back to channel and don't forget to subscribe the channel. They were powerful men who moved through the same gilded rooms, smiled for the same photographers, and drank from the same private bottles. Decades later, an account from an iconic model has ripped open a fresh seam in a story that has never stopped leaking: the relationship between Donald J. Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Stacey Williams, a model who says she briefly dated Epstein in the early 1990s, told reporters and survivor advocates that Epstein introduced her to Donald Trump at a party, and that later at Trump Tower in 1993, Trump groped her while Epstein watched. She described freezing in fear and feeling trapped in what she called a twisted game. Williams's words, her claim that she felt like a piece of meat, echo disturbingly familiar accounts heard in other Epstein-related testimonies. These are allegations, not yet adjudicated facts, but they strike at the very core of the Trump-Epstein connection and demand careful, unflinching examination. Why this particular allegation matters more than countless whispers of the past is not only because of its detail but because of its context. For decades, journalists and investigators have documented the social associations between Trump and Epstein. They appeared together at Mar-a-Lago, moved in overlapping Manhattan and Palm Beach circles, and were photographed together multiple times in the 1990s and early 2000s. Flight logs, court records, and contemporaneous reporting all confirm repeated contact. None of these prove criminal collaboration, but they create the landscape against which Williams's account now sits. When her story emerges into public view, it doesn't stand alone, it aligns with the existing historical record of proximity. The evidence surrounding Trump's ties to Epstein falls into three main categories. First, there is personal testimony: sworn statements, press interviews, deposition transcripts, and survivor accounts. Williams's testimony fits this category, as do many others from Epstein's victims, each carrying emotional weight but also subject to scrutiny, as memory fades and credibility must be tested in court. Second, there are documentary traces: photographs, flight logs, Epstein's infamous address book, calendars, and seized federal evidence. These tangible records can place individuals at the same events and corroborate accounts, though they also invite multiple interpretations. Finally, there is institutional action and inaction: prosecutors who cut Epstein's sweetheart deals, law enforcement that hesitated, and courts that released or sealed critical documents. This institutional story is inseparable from the individuals who orbited Epstein. Williams's allegation is consequential because it recenters a critical question: what did Donald Trump know and when, and what did others in his circle allow or ignore? Her account describes a chilling performance of power: an older man's use of wealth and influence to humiliate and control a younger woman, witnessed and tolerated by another powerful figure. She says she froze, and the humiliation was deliberate. This description fits squarely with how prosecutors describe patterns of exploitation and facilitation in trafficking cases: power is performed, boundaries erased, and victims left isolated. While no criminal charges have been filed against Trump in relation to Epstein, Williams's account expands the narrative and demands it be weighed against documentary and testimonial evidence already in the record. A persistent issue here is the absence of a full, public release of Epstein's records. From seized hard drives to files locked away under seal, much remains hidden. The vacuum creates fertile ground for speculation. Why, people ask, are names withheld? Why are files sealed? Each delay in disclosure fuels the suspicion that those records might be politically devastating. Partial releases: the infamous flight logs, Maxwell's testimony, Epstein's phone book, have already exposed connections across politics, finance, and celebrity. The absence of the full archive means every new testimony like Williams's resonates louder because it might be the missing piece to a bigger, darker puzzle. It is also undeniable that Trump and Epstein shared genuine friendship before their fallout in the early 2000s. They vacationed together, they entertained together, and they both maintained social environments where young women were present in troubling circumstances. Trump has since sought to minimize those ties, often claiming they were distant acquaintances. Yet his own past statements contradict this. In a 2002 New York Magazine profile, Trump called Epstein a terrific guy who liked women on the younger side. That quote has haunted Trump in every resurfacing of the Epstein scandal because it seems less like casual flattery and more like an inadvertent acknowledgement of what Epstein was known for. Against that backdrop, Williams's allegation sounds less like an anomaly and more like an example of a wider, sinister pattern. Of course, Trump's camp has categorically denied the accusations, calling them fabricated and politically motivated. His lawyers have threatened defamation suits against media outlets that publish Epstein-related allegations. Such denials are predictable, but they also fit a broader strategy Trump has employed in multiple sexual misconduct allegations over decades: attack the accuser, dismiss the evidence, and litigate aggressively. Denial does not equal vindication, but it ensures that most of these claims remain in limbo, unresolved in courtrooms but alive in the court of public opinion. This is why the public must care, regardless of political alignment. The Epstein saga is not only about individual misconduct but about systemic failure: prosecutors who cut deals, social elites who looked away, and media outlets that hesitated for fear of access or lawsuits. Each new testimony that situates powerful men in Epstein's orbit reopens the question of complicity. Did Trump enable Epstein? Did he ignore warning signs? Or did his presence simply add to the social cover that Epstein relied on? These are not abstract questions. They determine whether accountability is possible or whether society accepts that power protects itself. To report responsibly on allegations like Williams's, one must balance precision with urgency. That means quoting her words, "twisted game, piece of meat," while making clear that they remain unproven in court. It means setting her story against the documented history of Trump-Epstein contact without pretending that contact alone proves complicity. And it means acknowledging the denials without granting them the final word. The task is not to convict or exonerate in print but to present the record fully and let investigation proceed. In a functioning democracy, the prescription should be straightforward: release the records that can legally be disclosed, allow independent review where privacy permits, and pursue litigation where evidence justifies. If allegations like Williams's can be tested in court, let them be tested. If they remain in limbo, then the debate will continue in the public square, a poor substitute for formal accountability but one that cannot be ignored. Allegations must never be dismissed out of hand, nor treated as convictions by headline. They must be documented, investigated, and weighed against the evidence. Stacey Williams's story deserves to be heard and tested, because it fits too closely with patterns survivors have already described and because it demands clarity on what Trump's real role in Epstein's circle truly was. Whether it confirms the darkest suspicions about elite predation or remains a contested account, one truth remains: secrecy protects power, and transparency is the only path toward justice.